Dear friends, Ajay and Manthan, and all Hyderabadis, I'm really happy to be here because more than anything else, this book has made me realize how much of a collective all democratic effort is. Nothing is single, nothing is led by one person, everything is led by many people. And if my friend Kamla Bhasin was here, she would say she's not a hero, she's a shero. So there's the, there is the gender, there is the feminist angle that we're all sheroes and not heroes. She insists that we should call ourselves, call anybody a shero, but I'm not even a shero. I'm just a chronicler, and I am a friend of many people, and I really was led by my own ignorance when I went to Rajasthan after I left the IAS in 1975. To know that I knew very little. Because in this world of complexities that India is, someone who goes through a Western liberal education has an arrogance and a feeling that we know everything. When I went to rural Rajasthan to work with extremely wonderful people, I realized I knew very little indeed. And my nose was rubbed in the dust. A few weeks after I went there, when I went to visit a woman, and I went at the wrong time, she was busy, and Rajasthani women are all tall and hefty, very beautiful, and with very, not hefty, very tall, slender, but strong women. So when I went to her, it was quite the wrong time. And she said to me in 1975, when I went to her, she said, "Why have you come?" So I went on blabbering about literacy, usual stuff, you know. We thought that we had to go and teach everybody everything and people knew nothing. And she showed me the door in a very polite, firm way. She said, "I don't want to be a collector. I don't want to fight battles. I don't want to fight my husband. So your door's there. Please go, and I don't want you," in other words. I came back home thoroughly shocked, wondering why I had left that job. I didn't like it very much, but why had I left it to come here to be told that I was useless? It took a lot of introspection to understand that indeed I was useless. Because in her worldview and in her home and in her political life and in her public life, I meant nothing. So it began as a very truly humble journey, not like the Uriah Heep humble. I don't know how many of us read Dickens anymore, but truly humble way of thinking that the world is not unicoded. It's not one world. India is many worlds. And rural India is rich in thought. It's creative, it's wonderful, but it's very different. I have a friend called Dunu Roy, not my husband. Dunu is a different Roy. And he used to say that every activist who goes into rural India starts talking about latrines. Because for the middle class, it's a major preoccupation. So the first thing we do when we go into a village is to start talking about latrines. And we have it still going on with the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. And we talk about all the things that we miss. But what is it that people want? So in a sense, all these stories, and there are so many of them, made me realize that actually, if I don't take a leaf out of Mahatma Gandhi's book, and all of us take leaves out of Mahatma Gandhi's book, and listen to people with perfect equality, if not humility, we will never get anywhere in democracy. So actually, the journey for all of us began with an obligation and in the joy of listening. And many of the stories in this book are the stories of extraordinary people who taught me, who have given to this country the RTI, who have understood the value of transparency, not in theoretical terms, but in very practical ways, but defining the principles on which right to information should stand. Actually, for those of you who do not know, the first battles began in 1994, but throughout the RTI, the principles of the RTI were defined by people who are in public action, ordinary people. And it kept resonating with the law that was being made in Delhi by under the chairmanship of Justice Sawant in the Press Council of India, where it was quite clear that the law would be fashioned by experts who knew which law, how to formulate and how to write a legislation. The RTI is a very well framed law because Justice Sawant chaired the meeting. But it's also a very good law because at every point the real reference and the non-negotiability came from its most ardent users, people who are on the edge between life and death, who needed transparency to survive, who said without penalty, take back the law. If you do not do this, take back the law. All the important salient points of the law that we appreciate today came from very ordinary people who said, take it back, we don't want the law if it doesn't have these postulates. This book, we have always written a lot in the MKSS. Nikhil and I publish a lot and you read all our articles published here and there. But even in the beginning, to survive, the four of us who went to live in this mud hut in Devdungri, Nikhil, Shankar's wife Anshi and I, we needed to eat and survive. Ours is not an NGO. It's not funded from anywhere. We crowdfund the organization, and in those days crowdfunding only meant getting grain from people or firewood, but nothing more. People didn't have money to give. So at that point we used to take on studies, and with these studies, which we linked ourselves to the Institute of Development Studies in Jaipur to make sure that our rigor of reasoning and the methodology we used was not slack or third rate or justifying what we wanted to know or understand, but would be on the scientific and rational principles of a research, but conducted by ourselves. So this book has its genesis in hundreds of writings. In fact, when we started looking at the composition of the book and how to write it, Lakshman, who works with me, and I and Ankita, and before that Saumya, who sits in the audience, Shankar, Kimu, we all sorted out papers. It was the most boring job. Nobody wanted to do it. An activist is very happy shouting slogans or fighting on the streets. The moment something had to be filed, no one was happy doing it. But we persevered, and MKSS collected its documents. So much so that when the RTI laws were passed and the NREGA law was passed, we gave a tempo, I don't know what to call it in southern India, in northern India, that big vehicle with it's like a small truck. And we filled it up with files to send to the Nehru Memorial Library because we felt these documents don't belong to the MKSS. Now it's part of the history of two legislations which should be accessed by anybody who wants to access it. After all, we are transparency people. We can't keep it closed and in a place where nobody can access it. So these documents went to the Nehru Memorial Library. Nevertheless, we had enough copies to stretch at least, I don't know how much it would be, about 300-400 meters. So they had to be filed, they had to be seen, they had to be catalogued, they had to be numbered, they had to be dated. So all this dog's body work was done over the last 3 years by a set of very ardent people whose names I would like to mention. Lakshman, there was before that and after that many others, but there was also Ratan, there was Samundara, there was Mukesh, such wonderful people who kept these records straight and kept them safe. The Nehru Memorial Library, on the other hand, when we went to access our own documents, would not give it to us and has not given it to us to date. There are so many applications put to the Nehru Memorial Library, except for an RTI, everything has gone in now. I think the time is right for an RTI. So some of the chapters that are thin because we did not get enough material and resource material to back what he said. So this brings to you 2-3 concepts. One is the concept of people in a democracy. I didn't lead this, the media made me lead it because they put my name in front. I did not lead it, I was led to it. I was led by people. Many stories, but I'll quickly give you 1 or 2. The first time I knew transparency was relevant was in a village when I went, and they said, you're cheats. You get so much money and you don't spend the whole money. Paste your budget on the walls of the village. Then we'll know you're honest. First lesson. Of course, in the IAS we say you should not only be transparent must appear to be transparent and so on, but how? The second time and third time and fourth time, there are many times, but the critical time when Mohan ji, who was a illiterate Dalit member, who after years of struggle was still hopeful, he said to us after our second hunger strike, and after that we've never gone on hunger strike, but that time we went on a hunger strike in Beam to access records, and he said, enough is enough, no more hunger strikes, we must get those records out. Every time we go and sit on a hunger strike, when we want medicines, when we want wages, when we want housing, this is ridiculous. So those papers must come out, otherwise we'll always be liars. It made a tremendous impact on us, and at the end of this, I think I'm going to request Soumya, I'm going to sing 2 lines from one of his famous songs which went viral, and that's how information went. The modes of people's communication. I'm really here because I'm a communicator, and all activism is communication. If you don't communicate and you don't receive, you can't succeed. So this book is the writings of many communicators which I've threaded together. It's not my book, but all of us are and have to be communicators. Whether you sing and do it, whether you play theatre and do it, whether you write and do it, whether you talk and do it, whether you meet this group or that group. To you all, I appear a leader because I'm from the middle class and I am the IAS behind me. A very interesting question was asked of Shankar. And in 2000, we got the Maksasai. Then someone said to Shankar, it must be great having the Maksasai. People in the village must be full of admiration for you. He said, come on, nobody knows what the Maksasai means. Nobody could care a damn what the Maksasai. They care about whether their ration, pension and their wages have been met or not. If you do it, you're of value. So the MKSS has value so long as it performs. If it doesn't perform, it's rubbish. They don't care a damn for the Maksasai. And that's the truth. So when we go to the village, who is the star speaker? Not me. The star speaker is Shankar. A star speaker is Chundi Singh. The star speaker is Lal Singh. The star speaker is Sushila. Sushila, who gave us that famous slogan, Hamara Paisa, Hamara Hisab, when she was asked in a public forum in Delhi, why have you come? You have not even passed the 8th class. What can you give us? So she said to them in 1996, when the first draft of the law was put before the public, and she was asked this question, she said, when I send my son to the marketplace with 10 rupees and he comes back, I ask for accounts. This government spends billions of rupees in my name. Shouldn't I ask for my accounts? So she said in Hindi, Hamara Paisa, Hamara Hisab. So in 4 words, she defined the right to information, which I couldn't, which Nikhil can't, which Shankar can't, but Sushila defined the RTI in those 4 words. So it's this genius of being able to use small amount of, we indulge in verbiage, but they speak succinctly and small. And in those words, they are able to tell you exactly and go straight to the root of the problem. These are the real makers of the RTI, and this book is a celebration of those people. This book ends with 2006, so you don't have the power play in it. And very often, I don't know if you've read or seen some of the interviews that have come lately on the YouTube, repeatedly some people want to know what power did. And repeatedly we have said, this is not about those powerful people. It's about the real power in democracy, which lies with ordinary citizens who had the perspicacity, the intelligence, the vision to see that the right to information, not defined as right to information, refined as transparency, was vital to India's democracy. Usually, and this is a big problem with India today, as we stand here, it's a contemporary problem, we have this peculiar attitude to leadership. We think one big, frightfully important, powerful leader will lead India to salvation. And yet we talk of a democracy. In a democracy, it's about collective leadership. It's about how important my voice is in the final decision. It's not about how powerful the man or woman is who sits in New Delhi or in Hyderabad. It's a question of how much do they listen to me? Am I part of the decision-making process? Is there an impact of what I say on the person who's taking decisions and making policy? These people were able to make an impact on the select committee, on the standing committee, on Justice Sawant, on Prabhas Joshi, great Hindi journalist who used to edit Jansatta, who came accidentally when we had the Biawar Dharna for 40 days in 1996 and joined the campaign and helped the campaign with so many issues. With Ajit Bhattacharya, used to be editor of the Indian Express and the Hindustan Times, and also was editor of Everyman, JP's daily in Bihar, of Kuldeep Nayyar, whom you all know, who's written Between the Lines, was our ambassador to the UK, and he's been many other things besides, and Nikhil Chakravarti, whose name is synonymous with ethical journalism. People like that were attracted to these very, very simple, ordinary people. And I remember Nikhil Chakravarti telling us, this is important. This is far more important than you think it is in 1996. He told us, these people will make a difference to India. And you have to persist and make platforms available for such people all over the country, which is what happened. And slowly people from Tamil Nadu, from Goa, from Maharashtra, from Karnataka, from so many states joined, from Assam, from Delhi, and the state laws were passed. But the point is, ordinary people did it, not extraordinary people. And we must understand that in democracy, leadership is always collective, and in the MKSS, we are a collective. We have no single leader, we have no secretary, we have no director, we have no chair, we have no vice chair, we have nothing. All of us get together and sit, and our decision is mutually, has to come to a consensus. We fight like anything, I can tell you. We disagree with each other, and there is no seniority, there is no priority, there is nothing like that. If you disagree, you just have to quarrel your way through. Quarrel doesn't mean fight, you know, quarrel means disagreeing. So you have to disagree and to rationally convince everybody that you are right or wrong, and we have existed like this for the last 28 years. So we don't have a leader, and I'm not a leader, and this book will tell you why I'm not the leader, but I'm one of the many, and I contribute whatever I can to this big battle. One other reason why this was written, and because the publisher came to us. In 2011-12, I can't remember, the publisher came to us and said, will you write your story? And the first reaction was, no, I don't think we can do it. It requires too much work. We have no time, and activists run all the time, as you can see from my life or anyone else's life. We run from pillar to post, today in Hyderabad, tomorrow in Chennai, day after in Jaipur, and after Jaipur to the villages of Rajasthan, which takes a solid 7 to 8 hours, 6 hours, 4 hours by jeep. So it's not a simple terrain to cross. So the first reaction was, no, I don't think we can do that. At that point, with this publisher, Roli was a cousin of mine, cousin-in-law of mine, who was working with him, and she persuaded me a lot. For 3 days she came and said, look, if you can't write it, you just provide all the material, I'll write it for you and you edit it. Finally, I think out of sheer desperation, we gave in. So we said, all right, and she left Roli. So the book was squarely on our laps, and we had to go through this extremely intense exercise to write. Most activists do not write, do not even keep diaries. Much is lost to this country and the world, because I think what we do is a kind of detailed understanding of the human predicament, which is not available when you do the broad brush stroke and the power equations, and we look at it from top down, you don't see it. But when you sit with people and you go through each individual act, whether it's a pension case, whether it's a case for minimum wages, whether it's a case of health excess, whether it's a rape case, you go through every single document, every single phase. You have no choice. Shanta is here somewhere, and she will corroborate whatever I am saying, that it's not easy, but it's something that needs to be documented. So much so that when the Hindi translation of this book happened, Raj Kamal, who did the translation, I've got 4 books here, one is already sold, but Raj Kamal, when they did the translation, Nirupam, Satyendra Nirupam, called me and said in Hindi, he said, look, this is like a activist manual of how you go from struggle to engagement to advocacy to campaign to movement and back again, because it's not a dialectic that stops, it's a movement. So it keeps coming back. So when do you do what and how do you do it? And how do you engage with your own government, which is your own government? We are not fighting with the British. It's our own government. So how do you fight with your own prime minister, your own government, with somebody who is elected, whether I voted him or her into power or not, has been voted through the ballot? How do you deal with it? It also told us the limitations of the vote. The vote begins and ends with the ballot. And with this huge battle and debate about the EVM, we don't even know where it begins. Let's not talk about the end. So we don't even know where it begins. We don't know whether it's tampered with. We don't know whether it really delivers our point of view. The matdan, as they say in Hindi, mat means my thought or idea or my wish. So we really have huge issues. So if we have to go beyond the vote, we have to fight for participatory democracy. And the right to information practically demonstrated how participatory democracy can be established in this country with ethics, with constitutional values, and with constitutional rights, equality, demanding a secular, independent republic, where equality, liberty and fraternity would be fundamental values, where we did not compromise on those values, but still had an anti-establishment position. We have to separate the business of governance from the state. If we don't, we will lose the battle. And RTI tells us how to get that business of governance public, transparent, accountable for the common person, he or she, wherever they are, and deliver. And this is a whole series of wonderful stories. There is one story about Pyarji. I don't want to anticipate the book, you might read it. However you like it or don't, the reviews have been kind to us, or they have actually said that the intent of the book is very clear, that it's people like Pyarji, people like Norti, people like Chunni Singh and Chunibai, people like so many others who fought, Chimanba, who took up the struggle for his corruption in his village, who have really etched the story of the RTI. Many people have also said to me that my voice is not there. It shouldn't be there. Why should my voice be there? I am only the chronicler, and they would say in Hindi the sutradar. But the stories are of people, and many of you sitting here may have stories I don't know, but I definitely know that Soumya's stories are there, writings are there, and so many people have been culled, Jean's words are there, so many people who have written at that time, journalists, media people, politicians, people, everything's there, because that's how cosmopolitan and together a democratic battle really is. It is strengthened, and this is the 8th launch, and this is the first launch in which I am standing alone. In all the other launches, we were 12, 13, 14 people on stage. Each one of us got 10 minutes to speak, and we had to speak about what we wanted to say in those 10 minutes. And in Bhim, there were about 20 people on stage with 10,000 people watching us, and it has always been like a mela. The first launch of the book took place in Biawar, and the comment of Vipul Mudgal, who was once a journalist and editor of the Hindustan Times in Rajasthan, and subsequently many other roles, but now is with Common Cause, sent a message back to my friend, colleague and comrade Nikhil Dey, saying, after the photograph was sent to him, that this is the first time I've heard of launches with cocktails, but this is the first time I've seen the launch with a dharna. Because all the composite parts of that dharna in Biawar were there. The Gotala Rath Yatra, which is that great chariot of scams which we took to take the message further everywhere. The extraordinary role that culture has played. Local musicians, folk musicians, women's songs, men's songs, and there was no social media in those days. So everything had to go to people in their own language. So we used songs. And I think I'm not going to speak too long. I think I'd like to really have questions and answers. So could I just end in 5 minutes and then invite questions, because I think I want to leave the story to you. But before I do that, I want to say one thing only, and that's the story of Mohanji, so that we can sing the song. Mohanji was a illiterate Dalit. a great bhajanchi, Kabir bhajanchi. He used to sing Kabir. His repertoire was about 500 songs. And he was an amazing man. He was elderly, but he walked everywhere. And every bhajan mandali he went, he talked about the RTI, he talked about the NREGA, he talked about people's. So you have to use cultural forms that are of the people to get any message across, and that's where we are failing today in India, to get our message of secularism through, or a message of, at least in northern India, we are failing. I don't know what southern India is doing, because we are not going to the cultural modes of people. Here I'll tell you two stories and I'll end. The first thing is that Mohanji story. Mohanji always sang his songs, and the lyrics were his, and they're beautiful lyrics. So I'm going to sing you one of those songs with Soumya. But before I do that, I'll talk to you about Baba Adav, who came to the 1st of May this year, and I told Ajay about him, and he came, and thousands of people. So he stood there and he said, "May I speak in Hindi for 2 minutes?" Yeah. He said, "सत्ता बदलने वाली बात नहीं है, ये व्यवस्था बदलने वाली बात है." He said that. व्यवस्था में बदलाव नहीं आएगा, अब बार बार सत्ता बदलते रहिएगा, व्यवस्था वैसी की तैसे रहेगी. So the RTI is the व्यवस्था बदलने वाला कानून. Then he said, he asked them, he said, you've read the Ramayana? They said, we've read the Ramayana. Some of them hadn't read the Ramayana, but they'd heard of it. He said, Dashratha sent Rama for 14 years to the jungle. When he sent him to the jungle, his wife said to him, "Why are you sending my son?" Kaushalya said, "Why are you sending my son? What kind of adharm has he done that you are sending him to the jungle? You say yours is a kingdom of dharma, of the righteous. What kind of crime has my son committed that you have sent him to the jungle? If he has not committed a crime and you send him, your kingdom is the adharma kingdom." She told Ram, "Don't go. Why are you going? Are you an adharmi?" He said, "No, I am not an adharmi." "Then why are you going? You shouldn't go." He said, "I am going to listen to my father because it's his agya, it's his order." So she said to him, "Your mother's logic and your mother's love has no role to play. I am telling you, don't go." And he said to them, he asked them, "Who was right?" And they all said Kaushalya. They all said Kaushalya was right. So I am saying that to bring the idea of fairness, of justice, to bring the concept of what is good or what is bad, depending on the nature of the public, nature of the people, nature of the myths they know, you have to bring that out. And if you go to a local, and if you go talk about Kabir, then Kabir has so many dohas. Bring out the doha, in 1 minute you say what you have to say. Use your rational, logical arguments, and you can go till the cows come home, nothing reaches them. So in this whole thing of the narrative, you will find how culture has been used time and again to reach people, and how these stories, whether it is the story of the raft of the children dying of hunger, who lived 4 months with hunger and hope, but the hope was finished, the children died. Telling stories and comments on so many things. That's how the campaign was built, and that's how the campaign still lasts. And that despite so many setbacks, despite so many of us having died, more than 70 people have been killed, the RTI still has 60 to 80 lakh users every year. And Venkatesh Naik, who came to the GPF launch, said every hour there are 300 applications filed in India. Is that right, Rakesh? So 300 applications an hour filed under the RTI. So let's look at the RTI as the commissions, the government and the people. If you look at the commission, it's management. If you look at the government, it's politics. And if you look at the people, it's democracy. So democracy still wants the RTI. But it is the power elite who don't want, and it is the politics that will play into it. Because with all the things that they have done to us in Parliament today, with the electoral bonds, with the new laws that have come in, where political parties can get foreign funding and not disclose any amount of money. They have really set back the RTI in a political sense majorly. We all know about the RTI, and this RTI filed by ADR saying that all political parties should show their accounts. They didn't want to know their policy. And you know what's happened, that the commissioner ruled that it should be, the Central Information Commission ruled that they should have public account, the accounts should be made public. The High Court upheld their, the commission ruled. They didn't go to the High Court, they didn't go into Parliament to reframe the law. There's a limbo. They are in limbo now, they don't have PIOs, and they have not gone up to either of the courts in appeal. So today again this book should motivate us in one sense to take up the battle to go on the streets again, because without the streets we have no future. Our streets are our parliament, streets are our assemblies, streets are our seminar rooms, streets are everything for us. It's in those streets that all these formulations took place. It's in those streets that we fought the battle. It's on the streets we did everything, and I think we have to get back to those streets. That message is very, very clear from this. So if Soumya and Rakesh will come up, we can also do small book release or just show the book, because we have so many of us. I don't know who else is here, I can only see the two of you, but Soumya and I can also sing 2 lines from Mohanji's song, which went viral. Instead of social media, I used singing, and those 2 lines which are so powerful, which were sung all over Rajasthan, which took the message of the RTI. बंदूकों मारता रो पहले वाला चोर भाया, बंदूकों मारता हो अब्बे वाला चोर तो कलमाओं मारे हो, राज चोरा रो अब्बे वाला चोर तो कलमाओं मारे हो, राज चोरा को. Come, Rakesh, where are the books? Okay. Anyway, I think after the huge numbers of people on the stage everywhere, I felt very lonely. So Ajay is also going to come, and whoever else wants to come can please come. I'm feeling terribly lonely on the stage. Writing about a huge collective and standing singly is very embarrassing. So, call
Nirmala. Shanta.
Shanta? Where is Shanta? Is she here? Gone?
She's there.
Come, Shanta. I mean, it's a collective battle. I can't be alone in this. Come. I think we should have a conversation. So all of you, any of you, wants to ask questions, make comments.
All of you will get there. I'll open the question.
Yeah.
Having seen this act work for the last 9 years, do you propose any major changes in the way the act is working, or do you want any amendments to be done now? Or is it the perfect act which was enacted in 2005?
Actually, this question has nagged us since 2006. May I ask all of you, or if any of you know, who did the first amendment to the act, proposed the first amendment? Who proposed the first amendment to the act? No. The first amendment to the act was proposed 6 months after it was passed by the same party that had passed the act in Parliament. Can you believe this? The UPA passed this act in May 2005, put it into practice in October 2005. 6 months after, they wanted to amend the act. There was a huge protest in Jantar Mantar which stopped the amendments. And what were the amendments? Maybe we could have done something better, but they wanted to whittle down the act, which they have now done systematically over many years. But they wanted to really reduce the power of the act, the scope of the act, and really whittle down all its teeth and actually take the teeth away. And within the ruling establishment, there was a part which didn't want it, but they did not realize when they passed the law how powerful it was. So as soon as the act was passed, they wanted it. So if we want amendments, are we going to be able to prevent the government from making what amendments they want, which is to really reduce it to naught. Do you all know that the post of the commissioner is now being reduced to that of a secretary to the government of India, from that of a Supreme Court or a chief election commissioner. The chief election commissioner is an independent authority. They want to make them secretaries so that they will be under the thumb of the ruling establishment. So when we propose amendments, do we have the power, the 60 lakh to 80 lakh users that we are, to go on to the road to prevent negative amendments? Is something we'll all have to ponder over. And of course we don't have Jantar Mantar in Delhi. We can go to Ramlila grounds if we pay 50,000 rupees a day rental. 50,000 rupees a day rental to have a day's protest in Ramlila grounds in this great republic. It's not a republic, it's this great democracy. Because in a republic we wouldn't have to pay 50,000 rupees a day for protesting. So we'll have to consider many variables. Of course there's always scope for betterment, but we'll have to balance it with the other negatives that may follow.
Hello, I'm Dinesh. I would like to ask you regarding the RTI Act. Why is the duration, normally once you file an RTI Act, why it should take, they should answer within a 4 weeks time, why not in 1 week or 10 days time? I saw a middle class family that produced the father's signature from the Department of Railways within 2 weeks time. They did not produce the document, the father's signature proof from the railways. Within 2 weeks time, they lost a court case. So, why is the reason it has to be only 4 weeks? Why not a week's time?
The point is that the upper limit is 30 days. It's the upper limit, it's not the minimum. You can get the information in a day, or I've gone and got the information just across the desk sometimes, and I've not got the information for months on end sometimes. So the point is, there must be reasonable time also given to people depending on the question. See, you must also be reasonable, I must be reasonable. There are some questions that are so complicated that you cannot give the information in a week. There are some that you can give that very instant. So I think some public pressure and some law. Just the law without public pressure won't work. So that's why it's very important to form, like you have in Andhra and Telangana, you have your RTI groups. We must become much more powerful than we are today in terms of getting the law implemented, getting justice, as in this case. Getting justice. But justice also has to come through reasonable modes. So it's toss up. But I think what we have failed on in the last 5-6 years particularly is that we have not mobilized so strongly. The last time we mobilized was when the Manmohan Singh government wanted to amend the Act, and we got millions of signatures together. I remember in Delhi the NCPRI going with bundles 4 feet high, 2 big bundles with hundreds of thousands of signatures to the PMO's office and dumping it there and saying we don't want it. We also messaged all the Lok Sabha members. We did all this. This is our own history. So start doing it. That's how you'll get it. Not only in amending the law. That you must understand that this is politics beyond legislation. So we have to get people's power and people's politics to work. And in the story, there are many incidents in which it's through sheer people's power and sheer tenacity that we got things done in the beginning. They told us in the beginning, you can sit till the cows come home, you're not going to get the law. But we sat. We didn't get up. And we built a huge amount of support. We have now stopped fighting on the street. I feel that we have to begin again. Street means you don't have to go and sit literally on a street, but public action has to come back into the front, because RTI is just not only for information, RTI is for politics. Every single political entity in this country has understood it, from Bhairav Singh Shekhawat, whose story you will read here, who desperately went after the first set of public hearings in 94-95, to every village in Rajasthan where it had impacted, and said, no, I'll give you right to information, I'll give you right to information, because he wanted the vote. He went to the assembly and he said, I'll give you the right to information, and we will give you photocopies of bills, vouchers and muster rolls. A newspaper published it on the front page. We took that piece of paper and went around for 1 year. We told the government, We are giving you 1 year to implement this. If you don't, we are back on the street. They didn't implement it. The day we sat in Biawar on a dharna for 40 days, the cabinet met in Jaipur. We were very small people. Huh? We are now big, but we were very small. They sat there and they were petrified. People in power have understood, but we simply don't understand anything more than that application. We have to put that application in the background of political power, economic power, all the various power games that are. And we have to understand that we have to fight it in that context. And then we are back where we were. Otherwise, if the constitution is amended, and if they say they are going to do, and they are going to tamper with the fundamental rights, if Article 19 goes, right to information law goes. Right to freedom of expression is the root of the right to information law.
Aruna, in the context of what you said in this question and the earlier one, the issue is what happens when a party with a majority in the parliament just road rolls a law which would either dilute or nullify the RTI. What role does citizens have in getting that back? And it's not only about RTI, it's about any law or any right that is abrogated. How do you bring government to answer to the people? How can democracy be made to work?
I think primarily we have to understand that we have to make democracy work. That is, I think, a big lesson which has come through many campaigns. It's not only through the RTI campaign, it's come through the MGNREG campaign, the food campaign, the anti-corruption campaign, the Narmada campaign. So many campaigns, they've all been saying again and again that it is public voice, public protest, and the citizen who makes a difference. And this says the citizen is not only the person who's in urban India and who can read and write and use social media, it's the ordinary chap on the street who does digging, ploughing, all of that also are important. So multiple ways, mode can never be one. We can do tweets, which we did last time. We can do social media. We can do emails, which is for the domain of people here in this audience. We can do writing in the newspapers. By the way, I am also an ex-IAS officer, unfortunately. And the 1968 batch, I don't know if anyone's here today, but the 1968 batch first wrote a letter to Vasundhara Raje when Pehlu Khan was lynched in Alwar. Subsequently, something called constitutional conduct has been set up of many ex-IAS officers. Why X is another issue. Many ex-IAS officers who are protesting now when things happen. We've sent many letters and they are published in New York, they are published everywhere because it's what in Bengali they call Bhadralok. Gentlemen are writing. So they get published. So there is that avenue. Why don't we write? Why don't we get it published? Powerful people, citizens groups, the media will take your letter. There's also the fact that you should and absolutely make possible for people to come on the streets, money, space, permissions to hold protests. All this lies within your purview of work. And to get all those people together is not that difficult. But I think we must, and place to protest and demand from this government that you have absolutely no right to wish away our rights without just write an open letter of protest. There are many ways to do it, but it depends on what we want. And I've been looking at the YouTube. There are so many stand-up comedians who have said so many things. And there is a young man called Dhruv Rathi. As soon as this law was passed in Parliament, I don't know how many of you have seen Dhruv's YouTube. I see it because within 10 minutes he tells you what's wrong with the act or the law and where are the contradictions. He brings in proof of the Prime Minister's statement on Red Fort that's shown, then what he said in Parliament, what his Finance Minister said in Parliament, what was published in the newspapers, and he makes an absolutely cool analysis of statements. I think we have to promote people like him. We have to get them in all the languages because just English won't do, just Hindi won't do, in Telugu, in this language, that language, and I think India will rise. And I think there's a lot of anger now and angst with non-performance of this government, and we must question the facts of those figures because this one Rathi's whole program is on falsification of figures. 7 sets of figures have come, and he asks which is correct. Which is the correct set of figures? So when figures are thrown at us, we must question those figures. I'm afraid it's hard work. There is no easy way out.
Your experience in the government and of the government, right? A democracy with over-regulation leads to authoritarianism, and with no regulation leads to anarchy. What would be your advice for young policymakers to frame a law that we would have a right balance of things? The reason for this question is, we now see the slogan of the government, which is minimum government, maximum governance, is changing into no government and zero governance. First question. And one more question. That is, CAG reports have just become the headlines of the newspaper. Don't you think the policymakers, all the politicians, should also give explanations why have they been not performing well regarding on CAG?
I think I'll take the second question first. I think how many of us knew what a CAG report was? How many of us read what he writes or the CAG writes? The CAG is a constitutional authority, can only be impeached. Did you all know this? He's completely, there's always been a he, there's never been a she there. He has always been independent of government. He can't be coerced into saying anything. It's an extremely powerful post. And the CAG has been presenting reports in Parliament which are not read. I've met 3 consecutive CAGs who have now accepted social audit, which was an offshoot of the RTI, as a systemic way of dealing with accountability in government, where you physically check and say whether things have gone right or wrong. And all the 3 CAGs have asked us, how do you manage to get your word and your thoughts across to people? And why are these important reports never read by people? Increasingly now we are beginning to understand the importance of these reports, but still there is no public agitation as to why has that CAG report not been scrutinized, implemented. I went to Sri Lanka about 15 years ago, and the CAG report actually finished off a government there. Why aren't we doing it? Is a question you and I have to ask ourselves, because we are that group of literate people who understand, who can read, who can understand reports, who can understand facts, figures, statistics. We should be doing something about it. Do we have the time? If it's our future, we should make time. That's the plea in this book also, in a way. It comes through that if you don't make time, there's no democracy. In terms of this government, if you look at facts and figures again, if you look at the 6th pay commission and the salaries that have gone up, for 5 to 10%, which is people in government service, salaries have gone up the same amount as it's gone, and it's gone to phenomenal amounts. I don't know how many lakhs it's gone up, crores, how many crores it's gone up to. But for poor people, do you know how much pension an old age pensioner gets who is an unorganized sector worker? How much? Government of India gives how much? It gives 200 rupees a month. It's a joke. 200 rupees to a person who spent her life or his life working their hands off, their skin off, giving us food, whatever, building our houses, building roads, everything, because there's no pension for them. 200 rupees. State governments top it up. So you have 1,000 somewhere, 2,000 somewhere, 500 somewhere. The state governments give money, and you say that these people don't need a pension hike. But we are so bothered about what pension. My batchmates get a pension of 1,25,000 rupees a month or more. So I feel that somewhere the notion of dignity of life, dignity of livelihood, and the dignity of the individual, and notion of obligation for people like us who have got everything, privileged. I'm also very privileged. No matter where I am, I'm very privileged. to share with those who have not. We don't revive those Gandhian ideology. Don't even go to socialism. Let's go to Gandhian ideology of saying, I can't live in peace unless I see everyone get at least something. We don't even have that. I'm not saying about this set of people who have come to Manthan, but as in the larger, who cares? Who cares? So we have to question economics, we have to question salaries, we have to question, the proportion of money that goes into a very small segment of people. We have to question privatization without rationality. Who cares if there are private cars being made? But I certainly do object if every single school in Rajasthan is auctioned off to a private individual, and they are auctioning the best schools. The best run schools on highways are being auctioned. That means anybody can come. The buildings are the government's, but they run the school. They don't care whether all children come or don't come, whether poor children come or don't come. And just as we are putting our nose out of water in terms of literacy, just the noses come out. Our children are getting literate, we're going to lapse. So these are the questions we'll have to ask when we talk of governance, no governance. We need a strong, committed government for people. We don't need a government to look after the interests of private interests and business. We were told that the market will look after itself, so it should. We don't have to subsidize Adani, subsidize Ambani, subsidize all those big industrialists. We have to make sure that the poorest of this land have the basic requirements we guaranteed them when Ambedkar said every one man, one vote, but how long will it take to get economic and social equality? We don't fight for that economic and social equality, democracy is meaningless. And that's why RTI is so powerful a tool for the poor, whether you're people from Manipur, gun widows from Manipur, whether you're people in Kashmir, whether you're people in Kudankulam area fighting against the atomic plant. RTI has been such an important tool to get information to prove that we are rational, we are ethical, and we are not anti-state.
You mentioned that the RTI had been systematically whittled down. So could you expand on that a little, please?
For one thing, more and more parts of the government are now under the section which guarantees no disclosure. So if you look up the Act, you will find that while the CBI was not covered, now the CBI is covered. Slowly, more and more parts of the department, more parts of the government want to get under that. The Supreme Court doesn't want to be an open Supreme Court. You know the famous case where the Commission ruled that the Supreme Court has to disclose its administrative information. It went up in appeal against the Information Commission to the High Court of Delhi. The Delhi High Court ruled that it should show its information. Then finally they appealed to themselves. So now the case is lying with the Supreme Court. I mean, nothing could be more absurd. And you go to the political parties, they pass the law in Parliament, but they say they should not be liable to disclose information about their finances. Now tell me, with these electoral bonds and with this foreign money coming in, I don't think we are an independent country. If foreign money comes in and comes into political parties, they will do what they say. They are not going to do what we say. It's more and more important, therefore, that we demand transparency of public funding of political parties and all funding of political parties, and we also demand that there should be a say in who gets what, how much they do or don't. NGOs, I don't know how many of them here, many of them have got their FCRA scrapped for all sorts of reasons. I'm not one for foreign funds in any case, either here or there. But in any case, what is the logic? Where is the equality? And why should a political party get completely opaque funds and an NGO not even get it openly with the scrutiny of the Ministry of Home Affairs? Where is the parity? Why aren't we talking? Why aren't we questioning? All these questions must be raised, I think. And apart from that, commissioners are not being appointed. Pendency is so high. In some of the states, 3 years your case will not be heard because there's such high pendency. So there are all kinds of issues in which, and now more and more laws which are passed are not under the purview of the RTI Act. Beginning with the UPA government, they took the SEZ away from under the purview of the RTI Act. The SEZ is out of the purview of the RTI Act. So we'll have to scrutinize and monitor the parliament. Every law that's passed, we'll have to see what it does for us. We'll have to make sure, and we have to demand pre-legislative transparency, which we've all been fighting for in the NCPRI, that no policy or law passed by the government should go without public scrutiny. Without public scrutiny, no law must be passed. And we, the people of India, will have to decide whether it's in the favor. We will have differences, but nevertheless, a consensus emerges that the minimum thing, the minimum non-negotiable independence of the people of India must be maintained. You can take this.
Kindly comment on political appointment of commissioners.
It's in the law. You can't do anything about it now because I know there was a big debate in the NAC, and some of us felt there should be the Chief Justice, the opposition leader and the Prime Minister together appointing. But well, there were all kinds of negotiations and interests, and the judiciary was removed. But now looking at what's happening in the judiciary, I won't make any comment. So I think ultimately government will appoint. You can't have the public appointing commissioners. But what we do demand is a transparent process. It should be a transparent process, and we should not have people who have been head of IB and police agencies becoming information commissioners. They have a built-in prejudice against sharing information.
Yeah.
I've got just 2 questions. Actually, the thing is, I think we are celebrating the digital transactions. In that case, at least the government is celebrating the digital transactions, because everyone of we are happy now because 24 hours a day, 24 hours a day we can do a transaction. Government is very happy that we are doing that to a citizen. The same way, the central government, the union government has put the RTI online where we can find the 24 hours. But my startup state speaks volumes about artificial intelligence, machine learning, or biosciences. Don't want the 24/7 citizen participation in filing an RTI. That's one. Why don't we have that online? It cannot be mandatory by the law. At least as a suggestion, why can't we online? Because everyone are now moving to online. At least the government is talking about the online, the digital India kind of thing. Why can't? The second one is, you have rightly said, problem don't come from metro or larger part of India don't have problem with whether 1 crore in metro are misused or not. The problems come from whether my birth certificate is given or not, my pension is paid or not, my ration is given or not, whether it is good or the minimum amount is given or wrong amount is given. That's why we use the RTI to get the right facts to solve my problem. So why can't be the Right to Services Act? So what we need is the service. For that we are using the RTI as a tool, if I'm not wrong. So why can't we RTI clubbed with Right to Services Act and make that possible?
Actually, when the Lokpal debate was on, the NCPRI demanded that there should be a government this Grievance Redress Act, which will take away many of the grievances with the delivery of services. But your assumption that they are not interested in big corruption is wrong. You and I are the people who should fight big corruption, but we never ever, except for some groups in Delhi which have formed larger networks to fight the corruption, we fight it singly. When we fight it singly, we are liable to be killed, we are liable to be persecuted, we are liable to be prosecuted, we are liable for so many evils. So my class, which I was born in, doesn't mobilize itself into groups. It always works singly. I think what the middle class will have to understand, like Manthan, it's such a wonderful group because you've organized yourself. Similarly for RTI, you need organized groups which will fight this huge corruption. And when you fight huge corruption, you need a completely different set of skills. Now if you know what has happened recently, Cambridge, what is it? Cambridge Analytica and things, I mean, I can't understand it unless somebody sits with me like Rakesh and tells me what's going on or what's wrong or right. I need tutoring. I need tutoring to understand how that stealing of data affects me today. So crime has become cyber crime, and to understand cyber crime you need an understanding of cyberspace. So how do you expect, you go into the villages, you will not be able to deal with the kinds of problems they have. So finally I feel urban India has gone into a state of complacency and thinks that because the RTI has come I can file my RTI, but you will have to understand that the people who do not want to share information are forever alert, and they are using every single means of blocking it off. And of course you know that not all of you maybe, but some of us are fighting the UID for similar reasons, because the UID is taking information from us but not telling us where that information is stored. It's selling the information, and when people expose it, then the whole newspaper is being attacked. So many things have happened, and we should raise our voices, the RTI activists, the RTI campaigns, and we have not done so. Even if we don't agree with the UID, some of us think it's a good idea, some of us think it's a bad idea, but the processes through which people are being now attacked is now totally wrong. Why aren't our voices united? Why aren't we doing things? That's why I said we have to fight the campaign all over again. And about online, I think you should ask Rakesh. He's the best person to tell you about all this because he spends a lot of time. Rakesh, would you like to answer that question?
State government is considering that. Hopefully very soon we'll see that. I mean, with respect to RTI online, I'm saying the state government is actively considering, so hopefully very soon we'll see that.
That lady there?
Atul has been having intelligent conversations for more than 10 years now. A couple of years ago, I gave them a letter saying that we should have activist wing, like have a citizens union everywhere in every city and every village to take up a common man's cause. Intelligent conversations enrich our minds, but activism for the common man enrich their lives. Your comments.
Actually, we've been speaking of citizens' charters. When you talked about service delivery, it combines with your question. We should have citizen charters, and these citizen charters must be framed by us or in consultation with us. I don't want every department to frame the citizen charter. The citizen charter must contain the areas in which you and I feel there's a grievance. It can't be done by departments, and I think we should force all our governments to have citizen charters which are up there on the wall, which will deal with your problem as well as some parts of the service delivery problem. We must have. And let me ask you a question. How many of you have gone and got your various departments and ministries and various government offices to implement Section 4? Are there boards outside with all the information? 1 hand, 2 hands, 3, 4, there are many more. Every office we go to, we must say, where is your Section 4 display? It has 17 or 18 things they have to put out. They have to tell you how many people work in the department, what their roles are, what's their budget, what's their salary, how many vehicles. Everything should be out there. They don't. So even if you just implement Section 4, it's a huge thing. That single thing, if Hyderabad gets, you say Telangana will have Section 4 implemented, and all of you just make it into a campaign, say for 2 months or 3 months, it will be a huge service for the country. And actually if Hyderabad does it, then we'll follow and say why can't Delhi do it? And even Delhi has not done it, despite the Chief Minister being a child of the RTI. It has not happened in Delhi. So we have to fight everywhere for the Section 4. So there are things we can still fight for quite easily, and they are not that controversial. So, but there are laws which say that it should be in place.
Arna, you mentioned Section 4. I want you views on Section 8, which is the exemptions for MHA and national security reasons. While we are seeing the flow of information being reversed with the UIDAI corporate, we are not really sure how Cambridge Analytica or the intelligence agencies or political parties are using our own information.
So the whole idea of exemptions need to be relooked at, and with the new data protection law when it's going to be enacted, how do you see the RTI Act's role being diminished? And there's also a question, part of the data protection questionnaire, where they say, should the privacy commissioners be part of the information commissioners, or should they be a separate division altogether? Where do you see the conflict between both privacy and transparency, especially in the point of national security and surveillance?
You've asked a very, very good question, but it needs 2 days. But let me say, and since there are so many of us here RTI activists, we must have a special 5-day consultation on this. We have done it in Delhi. There is a conflict between transparency and privacy to some degree, which is right. That has surfaced in Delhi in the many debates after the Supreme Court order. It has become a huge issue. How much can you suppress? Section 8. Why should Section 8? How can Section 8 just take under its purview what it wants without a protest? We have not even protested. The last protest we did was with CBI. After that, we have not protested so loudly. Other questions that rise is there's an override which says that any law that concerns the interest, larger interest of people should be made public. Have we fought, for instance, this whole demonetization? Did we say it should have been brought into the public domain? Did we file a single complaint that under the right to information, this law, because it affected 1.3 billion people, should have been brought into the public domain to explain what it would do? It has ruined so many small enterprises, I can't tell you. Ruined them. I know so many young engineers, I know so many young professionals out of jobs because the demonetization just froze all the money and ruined them. I also know how it impacted even larger industry, because liquid cash is needed for transfer for so many things. Which of us, except some activists, and then we get damned. Oh, they always talk negatively, but we haven't raised these issues. So I really feel we must invoke the RTI for some of the sleeping sections, and there is an override which says that if it is in the interest of the people, the Commission can decree that any information should be brought into the public domain. Have we gone to the commissions in a huge crowd to say that it should be done? No. We continually say the same things, and pardon me if I sound a bit critical, but both the questions of the media and our own complaints have gone into a rut. We have to get out of that rut to revitalize the RTI today, and we have to look at it from a different perspective. I get the same questions, somebody says again the same thing, what is it, that the questions should not be frivolous and so on, still saying it 10 years or 12 years into the RTI. So I think we need to also come together, and I am really making a plea to all the RTI users actually, that we should really re-examine the government, its role, the Commission, its role, and the people and our role, and the politics today. Why is it getting more and more centrally focused in the Union of India, and particularly in the Union of India in the hands of a few people? How can you have a law passed without Parliament passing it, without the Cabinet looking at it? As a democratic Indian, I feel insulted. And I think these are questions which should agitate right to information activists and users as well. Yeah. Is she the first woman to ask a question?
Thanks so much, ma'am, for your RTI. Actually, you are the hero or shiro, whatever you call your.
I'm not.
Whatever you call, no problem. I'm Kanti Kannan. We fight for pedestrian safety in Hyderabad. We've used the RTI to good effect, and we are very, very happy that it's helped us actually. My point is quite different. Today we send an email to the Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation, for example. We don't get a response from them. Is that not part of the RTI itself?
Do you file an application or just send a question?
No, I have filed several
RTIs.
applications online, not RTI.
Just
RTI
application.
is a separate story.
Okay.
RTIs we've been successful at the
Okay,
information
okay,
level
okay.
after several
We're
years.
just talking about applications
And
online. Email.
Supposing you're talking about an illegal construction behind your house, there are not going to be too many people supporting you. You're going to be an individual filing a complaint to the GHMC from your email ID. Am I right or wrong? So when you file a complaint, that complaint, what they do is, they ask the person whom you have complained against to come and meet you. Give them your phone number. This is what happens actually.
I think you'll have to take it up, but there is one solution in terms of a systemic cure to, not cure, but to address it systemically, is the Right to Hearing Act we've got in Rajasthan. We have an act called the Right to Hearing Act. Within 7 days, we demand a speaking order. You're given a number. It's not working very well, huh? It worked well with the previous government when Gehlot was there. It began to be effective, and then with the present government, they're doing nothing. But in the Right to Hearing Act, you can file an application, and if they do not answer you within a certain period of time, that becomes an issue again. It's not only the filing of an application. If they don't give you the answer, it becomes an issue again. So then you take it up and they have to give you a speaking order. A speaking order is that it has to be something that is actually addresses the issue. In so far as this is concerned, where they are trying, where they give you a number to somebody, we'll have to now see under which act there is a liability of the government and which act they are. It's a maybe a minor criminality of the government to share information without your consent. I don't have a ready-made legal framework within me, but I think we can. And I think online, if you put an application online, it must also have a time-bound redressal mechanism within it, and it should also maintain a certain degree of confidence of the person who complains. These are principles on which we can't compromise. Now, having said that, we should work out how it can affect people. No, RTI, you will have to follow the legalities of the RTI. You'll have to put a 10 rupee stamp. You'll have to do all that, because it's on the dependent on your receipt that you get those 30 days and all that, because without the receipt you can't count your 30 days.
Good evening. Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to Hyderabad. My name is Mehboob. Thank you so much for that eloquently fomenting our political enlightenment. Ma'am, undoubtedly this RTI enactment has been an incredible, revolutionary, empowering enactment of law in the recent decade. And I believe the original founders of the RTI have been sagaciously contemplating on the outcome of this law. Ma'am, I would like to say that in a certain sense, India is still, nominal, literary, autocratic, demagogic democracy. So what we see is the two outcomes we have generally whenever someone files an RTI is a good outcome and a bad outcome. The good outcome is, if you're lucky, you get a reply. The bad outcomes are two, ma'am. The first bad outcome is they will, ignore your RTI. And the second one is you will be sent to heaven. The thing is, my question is, with a lot of hundreds of killings which happen in the RTI and all, how are you contemplating on preventing the deaths of people, avoiding going to heaven before getting a reply for the RTI? Thank you so much.
Actually, if you had followed the debates subsequent to what we call the second generation laws that are required after the RTI was framed, we demanded 4 laws in the national campaign for people's right to information. One of them was a whistleblowers law. Now this whistleblowers law is lying in Parliament. I think we should now have a signature campaign to have it notified. It has still not been notified. 70 people have been killed on record. We know there are many more who must have lost their lives. Similarly, the grievance redress bill is also not passed, not considered, not debated, not discussed. But to some extent we have also become quiet. I think we will also have to agitate for the grievance redress bill being passed in Parliament. And we have to fight against this current rules. As I was coming today, somebody said the rules have been passed. There was a set of rules circulated by this government. See, when you say amendments, you immediately say, what is this government up to? The difference between an amendment and a rule is that the amendments go to Parliament. The rules are passed by the executive. So your DOPT can quietly pass some rules under public pressure, political pressure. But it doesn't go into Parliament. One of the rules that they had said, and there are many, but I will just, since I've lost a shortage of time, they had said that if a person is killed or dies, they didn't use the word kill. If a person dies after applying for information, that information need not be disclosed. So we'll all be dead. So we said that this is a death sentence. So none of us we have repeatedly said it shouldn't be done. But where is your voice? So therefore you should demand that those rules be brought into the public domain, and then you must fight for it. And the NCPRI, the campaign, had demanded that every person, any person killed in the course of asking for information, it should be mandatorily put on the website, that information he or she sought. So that now they will understand that if a person is killed, it will go up immediately on the website, all that information. They are doing just the reverse. They are doing many other things. Now that's where I think our antenna has to be very sensitive, and we have to circulate the information rapidly enough for a response from all of us.
Hello ma'am, good evening. It's been a very intellectually stimulating last 2 hours. My one simple question would be, like you said, if we want to get RTI back, we'll have to go to the streets again. In the last 1.5 years, I've been following elections across different states. And a similar thing that I've noticed across these states is we've reduced to politics or election campaigns of personalities and not issues. The number of issues that perhaps we've discussed in the last 1.5 hour here have not been discussed in the last 1 month in Karnataka state elections. We've had 2 political parties attacking each other on their personalities. Now, my very straightforward and simple question is, what we can do to see that our political dialogue, the election campaigns, move away from this discussion dialogue of personalities to actual auditing of issues, auditing of work, and how can we move away from this personality-driven politics to issue-driven discussions, issue-driven elections, and perhaps only then can we have a functional democratic state. So what can we do that we move from politically personality-driven elections to a more issue-driven election?
I think it's an extremely valid question, and we have had in the past what are called Khula Manch, and we called political parties of all political parties, and we framed the issues and we wanted from them responses. Now that was done by people's movements, but now it should be done by the citizenry. And I think what we should do in every city is have a demand, no matter whether the elections are in Karnataka, the elections are in Kerala, or they are in Manipur, or they are in Punjab, or Delhi, or Rajasthan. We in anywhere sitting in India want to know what are the issues under debate. We've been crying ourselves hoarse, and I'm so happy to hear you say it today. But how do we make the ground swell? And that is where the youth will play an extremely important role. You use your social media not for all the rubbish that goes on there, but to put this in and say, these are the issues on which we should talk and discuss, and get your internet, get your youth groups to talk, and we people who've been saying it are on your side anyway. But this should be, at least let's work towards the next general election. Let's say we don't want discussions about Modi or Rahul Gandhi or anyone. We want issues. What are you going to do for India on these critical issues? What are you going to do for employment? And please deliver. They have made promises, they have not delivered. So we'll have to have, what are you going to do? And on the other side, we'll have to have a performance sheet, where we say you promised this and you did nothing. You promised this and you've done only 3%. You promised this and you've done only 6%. We must have a performance sheet, and that speaks today. So we should have that, and we should really fight for a more rational India. I feel worried. Former elections were not like this. When I was young, the elections were not like this. There were no personality debates, there were ideas. Today we've become extremely petty in our public debates, and I agree with you, it has to change.
I think I'll help my Sardar friend here. If you actually understand why Nehru did not visit Savarkar in jail, then you will also understand how we can get the right to free education in this country. Think about it a lot.
Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. RTI, in a sense, discloses accountability which the public is generally, or if I may be both, mostly unaware of. So in that case, it helps a lot. But when it comes to the enforcement of a punishment, particular person accountable for a particular wrongdoing had to pass through a judicial process. Now, it moves in a snail's pace. The judicial process really moves in a snail's pace, unfortunately. And that in the time for the particular case. Right.
Come closer, come closer.
In a matter of scientific endeavors, there is called as in a matter of scientific endeavors, there is something called as H-index or number of gives merit or demerits of a particular work. I find that the parallel process to the particular person who is accountable for a wrongdoing.
Actually, you know, we have had a lot of confusion because this is just transparency. Now, if you say that I can see everything but it should work on its own, it won't. So, this transparency is just to show you what there is. Accountability was the Lokpal. Why are we not fighting for the Lokpal bill in Parliament? Okay, there was a big campaign for the Lokpal, but whatever Lokpal there is in Parliament, why aren't we fighting for its notification and its passage? We must fight. We can't give up. Any campaign that gives up does far more harm than not doing it at all. So what the Lokpal bill people demanded, the big surge for it, at least even if it's half, quarter, 1/3, even 1/8 of it, that demand must come up again soon enough to say we want the Lokpal in place. There are lots of battles we have to fight against impunity, for instance. They are raising impunity. You know what they've done with the Lokpal? They've increased the impunity levels, the threshold of impunity. They've done many things that are wrong with it. You understand what impunity is? Yes. So in all these cases we have to fight the battles. See, the British said the devil lies in the details, and that's where they will kill us. So people will have to be on the alert to look at the details, but not forget that there has to be a political campaign, people's political campaign along with it. So the job of people like you is to see what's wrong with the details, see the remedies and feed it into the public domain so that the upsurge happens, the groundswell happens, and a big battle is fought on the streets. So that is the role of the middle class, and the middle class has to do it because you have the skills, the time and the understanding. So if you do that, then yes, there will be a conclusion, there will be accountability. Otherwise, inshallah.
Yes, Ajay.
Good evening, ma'am. I think you heard my right. Yeah, I think you partly answered my question, but I still want to ask. It's a personal question. What was your tipping point into activism? You said you were an IAS officer. So what took you, what sort of provoked you to move into what you are today? And how can you scale this model? How can India get to a lot more participation of that level of activism? All of us in the middle class are mostly armchair activists. We are happy to listen, we are happy to speak, but we don't really go out and do what people like you and your team have done, ma'am. So my question is to understand, how do you do that? A secondary question is, like you said, the son of RTI, Kejriwal, the experiment in alternate politics. If we as a nation have diluted that experiment, if our acceptance of mediocrity continues to stifle all forms of activists and wonderful efforts like what you are doing, what is the future of us as a nation? That's my question.
I don't think there's a paucity of activism in India. You should just come with me one day and I'll take you across India and you'll find how many people have on their own fought so many battles, so many, and I'm sure all my friends will agree, everywhere I go people are fighting as many battles as I'm fighting. Let's say that there's some degree of luck or right timing or the right window of opportunities that some of us get and we strike them. If we have the political wisdom to strike, then something happens. If we don't, look at the Narmada Bachao Andolan. I don't think there's been a greater Andolan than the Narmada Bachao Andolan. It has taught every one of us so many things. But luck didn't work with them, timing didn't work with them. Today they are facing one of the worst case scenarios in the world. But can you fault them for effort? Can you fault them for reasoning? Can they set up the World Commission on Dams? They did so much work, they taught the world about development and how development can really be unequal, unjust and completely undignified. But on the other hand, are we willing to fight the other battles? Are we willing to look at the other denominations that are impacting us? Consumerism. Are we willing to look at the whole process of digitalization? Are we willing to look at the internet? You see, technology is a very good servant but a terrible master. Are we willing to accept that? Are we willing to look at where it's becoming our master? Are we willing to question it? Are we willing to dirty our hands and say that something is wrong if we are trolled, if we are spat upon? In those days when we were questioning the Lokpal in the form it was being put forward by India Against Corruption, I just went and saw one old mail and there are about 150 comments in which some people have literally spat on me and Nikhil. They couldn't spit in fact, but they've spat. So the criticisms you will be able to have to take, you have to get a hide which is hard. You have to understand that these are all brickbats and bouquets. Neither of them matter. The issue matters. The issue matters. It doesn't matter whether you get awards, whether you become chief ministers or whether you become whatever it is, supra activists or sheroes or heroes or whatever. This is insignificant. It doesn't matter. What should matter is the issue. And there are examples in India, so many wonderful people who fought for our independence. Whether it's M.N. Roy or Mahatma Gandhi or Ambedkar, you name them, or Bhagat Singh. There were so many people who didn't fight for their name. They all fought for an issue. You can disagree with them. That's a different thing. But they didn't fight for their name or their glory or that kind of commitment. If it comes back to us, we will work it. But it shouldn't be for all the other things that have now become part of our general expectations in life. And if it comes by the way, I call all these things occupational hazards. Whether it's an award, whether it's a this, whether it's a that, it's an occupational hazard. The real thing is, has the issue succeeded? And if the issue succeeded, we have succeeded. If the issues failed, we failed. Now there, even in the case of NBA, the issue by failing has also given India the roadmap for activist work. What we all owe the NBA is huge. Though today the NBA stands having lost Sardar Sarovar with so much displacement, but we still owe them a lot. So whether we fail or succeed, it's your own probity, it's your own integrity that really matters. It's not success. It's not whether you're a hero or a failure. It's not whether you're in the limelight or not in the limelight. I simply don't think these things matter. And I think that is what drives some of us into madness. Because we go on and we can't stop. I'm 72. Every year I tell myself this is the end of my road. I'll have to stop it. But I can't. the moment there's a lynching in Rajsamand of a Muslim, or in Pehlu Khan was lynched, I couldn't sleep for 2 months. I couldn't sleep. So when that lynching takes place, you just fight because it's your obligation to do it. I belong to the majority community. I belong to a privileged household by birth, though I may not live like that today, quite in full entity, but I do have claims to all that. What is my role as a citizen of this nation if I keep quiet or if I don't do anything? What am I doing and what is my life worth? Even if you speak in other terms, in religious terms, in spiritual terms, what is it that I will gain by not speaking? And what will I win if we speak in huge numbers? And people have started speaking because we have to deal with that fear in myself and in society. We have to speak for justice, for life. We can't go around doing this. And is this the kind of India we want to live in? If I don't want to live in that kind of India, I'll also have to fight for a different India. I can't just wish it. Wishes just don't turn into horses. We have to go and look for issues and struggle. And I think each one of us has the capacity to do it in small and big ways. In Manthan, you are doing it. Take just that one little step further and you'll do more. Don't look for the sky, but do it in small ways, and many small mutinies, these million mutinies will make a difference to the Republic of India. Otherwise not.
Pardon me, I'm sitting here. Honestly, I'm so much thrilled. Yes. Honestly, I'm so much thrilled and fantastic ever talk inspiration. But what is happening? Smasana Vairagyam, Prasuti Vairagyam, whenever we are in the dead burial ground or whenever the madam gives birth to the child, at that time Vairagyams will come. Manthan will organize the things like that, and they will keep the people like you. Excellent. We organize, we educate, but unless I honestly feel, believe, at the age of 66, my person speaks since 35 years, to go on fighting like this, but individual fighting alone will not be there. I sincerely, with Sastanga Namaskara to the founders of Mr. Vijay and Vikram, request them under your auspices that today, that we should have one more wing, activist wing, because it's not my talk, it's Ambedkar and Abdul long back that besides educating and organizing, we should have agitation. In the absence of agitation, we can't. So it is in this context I express my feelings only. I'm not hurting anybody, please pardon me. My point, I want a reaction from you. The thing is, unless we are the so-called educated, if I talk anything, some other people may. So individually instead of fighting like this, it is the association. It is the associations. If it comes to the picture, then this will be so many deaths and everything will not be there. Dhanyavad. I think people may not be able to catch my point. So kindly, at least, let the question be there in their mind. Repeat my question for yourself, madam, so that people will be taking home this question itself. Dhanyavad.
If it did not get it, Mr. Vikram will convey my question. Don't give me the reply, sir.
My only reply at this stage would
No
be
reply I want. I want question.
I'll just clarify one matter.
Yes, sir.
Manthan was founded by me and Ajay, not Vijay.
I said Ajay only. Don't find fault like this. Sir.
We'll discuss it.
No,
Please.
don't dilute the things like this.
I am not diluting. These questions are very, very difficult questions to answer. This one,
so you want to take the time.
you respect your sentiment, it will stop.
Thank you, sir.
Namaste. I would like to know your idea on your opinion on this idea. I feel that there should be something Indian political service because the politicians are coming like illiterate, they don't know anything what they want to do, what is the knowledge of their idea or anything. So they should pass some either written or oral examination before they filing the nomination. And also at the time of nomination, they should give on the list of the projects what they want to do in the first year, second year, all of that. And then each and every year they should show what they will do and all that, and they should be thrown out of the service. Because they are entering the office without any proper knowledge or training. So that is wasting the time of all the officials will be there helping them. Like it's like very well trained and very knowledgeable people. People are working with very illiterate and who don't know anything. And they are ruling our country. Illiterates are, how can the illiterates can help illiterates? Here illiterates means people who don't know anything about the countries or constitution or laws or anything. What is your opinion on this idea?
I'll just divide it quickly into two parts. I think in the villages of India now in Rajasthan, you can't stand for election of a sarpanch unless you pass the 8th class. Some of my Dalit women friends have been excellent sarpanches without an 8th class pass certificate. One of them even knows how to run the computer, but she doesn't have an 8th class pass certificate. So just literacy sometimes may not answer, but I take your point. Our members of parliament need a whole sanctioned staff who will educate them about each bill. When I was in the IAS, when I was shifted from one desk to the next, when I was shifted to the desk on excise and sales tax, it took me 3 months to understand the details of a sales tax law after all my educational background. So I do not think anyone in the world can understand everything. So what you really need is what is there in the United States, where each person in parliament, where they call congressmen or whatever, have people allotted to them, 5 or 6 paid people who help them with legal research, with information, but not with party politics in mind, but with the truth in mind. So what we really need that, but we can't have a political service. The political service will become like all other services, self-creating and self-satisfying. So I think that's not the answer, and literacy and education are two very different things. India is hugely literate today and hugely corrupt. Every single mass corruption and big corruption is managed through extraordinary literacy, not only of ordinary literacy, but computer literacy or digital literacy. So we just don't want literacy without ethics. So we'll have to actually talk about this. I take your point though, mind you, that there must be some basic understanding. May I say that you're all part of the RTI, that you're all part of the movements, that you're part of this country and you're part of my larger family. So without all of you, nothing will succeed. So just whatever we can, wherever we can, and nothing happens singly in this country. So but thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.